Alright guys, sorry for the delay, but we will start off our long break that we've had with another test-taking strategy video. Because the AP exam is coming up soon, I know that this year for 2019, the AP exam for AP US History is May 10th, which is next Friday. So, we're going to prepare for the DBQ by going over some strategies. Now, I have the printed out strategies list in front of me right here. So I will give this to you in the links in the description. You can click on that, follow along, read it at your own pace if you want. Pause me, don't worry, I'll still be here when you come back. So let's just jump right into it. And we start off by reading the prompt that we are given for this one. So the prompt that I came up for this one was analyze the effectiveness of World War II on ending the effects of the Great Depression by using the following documents and your knowledge of history. So this is sort of like what an actual DBQ prompt would be like. It says using the following documents and your knowledge of history is normally how they're worded. I would know because I looked at a lot of prompts to create these strategies. So take a look at the documents. We have some interesting documents. We have a graph and a speech. So it's DBQ time. I don't know why I wrote 2 exclamation points. That's kind of cringy. Yeah, anyways. So we have 6 strategies that we're going to go through. So this is in order, by the way. So this time, like last time, I'm pretty sure, it's in order. So everything's in order. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to read the documents. So when you're reading the documents, and this goes in regards to my strategy, what you're going to do is you're going to spend 5 to 10 minutes looking through all the documents, and you're going to make notes as you go. So sort of like annotations in like your literature class that you've done before, as well as in any sort of language arts class that you've done in the past. Some kind of annotations like that. However, they don't need to be like too detailed, like you don't need to highlight anything because you won't be allowed to use a highlighter during the AP exam. Nor will you be allowed to use a pencil, it's all in pen. However, you could bring an erasable pen, but I digress. You will in fact have a pen, just jot some notes down essentially is what I'm saying. Don't read too much. Okay, I can't stress this enough. Don't read the entire thing. If you have a giant speech, you should not read the entire thing. That's just dumb, and you're wasting time. But you should still make sure that you have a good understanding of the content of the document before continuing. If you read through the document, like you skim through it a bit and you're like, I have no idea what I just read, then I would suggest looking over it again a little bit more thoroughly. And if you still don't understand, then you should read through it again a little bit more thoroughly than last time. And if at that point you still have no clue what's going on, I would suggest not using that document. If that happens with multiple documents, you might not have prepared as much as you should have because it should be easy enough. And if you feel like you don't understand what it is, but you want to get at least 6 of the documents, and you only understand like 4 of them, then just give up on trying to use all 6. Only use the documents that you understand, is what I'm trying to say. So, as you're reading the documents, you should ask yourself these 4 questions. What is the importance of this excerpt? How is this document related to the prompt? To what extent is the topic of the document impactful to the event or events? And how can I use this document in my essay? I would suggest when you're jotting notes down about the topic, you just put a summary of what it's about, and then afterwards you're going to create some sort of outline of what the document is about and answer these 4 questions, because these 4 questions are very useful. And I think you should also include those in your jotted notes if you don't want to create 2 separate lists, because that might take too much time. So again, 5 to 10 minutes looking through all the documents. So let's do a practice reading. So our documents, our first document is a speech from Harry S. Truman. It was a statement on Hiroshima to the United States Congress on August 6th, 1945. So, you should read through this, so since we only have 2 documents here, but again, it's supposed to be 5 to 10 minutes for all 7 documents that you're given, you should spend about, we'll say, a minute on each document is what I would recommend, since 7 is about halfway through 5 to 10. It's a little less than half, but let's not worry about semantics. Take about 1 minute to read this document, then you're going to take 1 minute to read the other document, and you're going to jot some notes down, okay? So the notes that I wrote in my practice reading were my notes were not bullet points, okay? Bullet points are not good notes, but they're good for organization of the content. So I did not do bullet points, but you can do bullet points if you want. So here's my document 1 analysis. The atomic bomb was created using new scientific discoveries and was funded using research development finances from major allies, such as Great Britain, in hopes of defeating Germany. This document is challenging to use as an evidential event, but can be used for interpretation and developing analysis. So here we go, answering the questions that we had asked at the beginning. So that answers, how can I use this document in my essay? It relates to the prompt, so that is the second question, how is this document related to the prompt? Because it displays the ability of the war to increase technological innovation and government spending, which helped bring the United States out of the Great Depression. There's your answer to number 1. And the first part, the atomic bomb was created using new scientific discoveries. That's a little bit of context, and that is exactly what the document is about. So started off with a summary, what it's about, and the content of it. Then we got into answering those 4 questions. I didn't answer all 4 of them because I kind of answered all of them. I didn't answer all 4 of them separately. I answered all 4 of them in like 3 sentences. So you can take a look at that if you want, and you didn't quite catch that when I said, or you could just rewind because technology. And for document 2, our second document is a chart from San Jose University in 2008. Here's the chart. Okay, hopefully you see that. Okay. It's just the U.S. unemployment rate from 1930 to 1945. As you can see, it increases. It's a hit. Then it goes back down from 1933 to 1937, but it's not as down as it once was. Then it goes back up, and then it comes back down, and then it hits this huge dip, this huge valley. It's almost at 0% in 1944. So what I said in my practice reading for document 2 was the unemployment rate started to diminish in the 1940s, most likely because of the U.S. involvement in World War II. That is the importance of the excerpt, as well as what is the extent of the topic impactful to the events, and also a summary of the document, because again, it's a picture, can't really summarize what the content of it, I'm just saying what it is. The chart displays the massive decrease in unemployment due to the formation of war jobs and many citizens being drafted into the military. That is my analysis of the document, which we will get into later, but that is also sort of my way of relating it to the prompt, as well as sort of, we'll say, circling it around to how am I going to use it in my essay, because I'm analyzing it so that I know where to put it, where to place it, and how to use it. So since I understand the content of both documents quite well, the amount of information I can gather for the document determines its usefulness in my essay. Because I wrote more about document 1, it is most likely more useful in my essay and should be used to make higher quality analysis and expansion. However, document 2 should be used to contribute to a certain claim and then transition into possibly outside evidence for further substantiation, which is pretty much what you should do for most charts or images. You just use it. You can use some HIPP, which we'll get into quite soon, but we'll just use it to introduce something, we'll use it to circle things, we'll use it to relate back, but we won't really use it much for analysis. We'll use stuff that you understand more about the topic to say this truly displays, like something important or impactful, something that like truly displays the topic of the prompt. So after reading all the documents and annotating, choose at least 4 to 5 documents you would like to use in your essay. Remember that if you use less than 6, you are sacrificing an evidence point. If you believe that you cannot use them correctly and might hurt your analysis, work hard on analysis and development points to make up for the lack of documents. And when I say choose at least 4 to 5 documents, I mean choose at least 4 to 5 documents. At least, stress on at least. Meaning that if you're like, I don't understand some of these, choose at least 4 to use. If you're like, I only understand 3 of these, still pick 4 of them, because it wouldn't work very well if you only use like 3 or 2. I'm just saying, you probably would not get any evidence or analysis points at all if you only have minimal evidence to substantiate your claims. I'm just saying. So make sure, and if you want, you can use all 7 if you're like a god or like you want to. I don't know why you would ever want to, but just try and use 6 is my goal. I would say shoot for 6. If you can't quite get 6, maybe you can get 4 or 5. That's fine, that's the minimum I would say. But don't go any lower than 4 to 5. And I would say definitely try not to go more than 6, because then you're cutting into your outside evidence, which is like strategy number 5, use your brain. But try not to use all 7, because then it kind of cuts into your other information, such as your HIPP, which we're going to get to like right now, and your outside evidence. So the next strategy is look for HIPP, which we'll just abbreviate for HIP. Now, what does HIPP stand for? It stands for historical context, intended audience, point of view, and purpose. Now, spend 5 minutes looking for HIP in at least 3 documents. Don't be too thorough in your search, because you will end up losing time. Again, time is of the essence here. You need to make sure that you're not wasting time. You need to spend the proper amount of time doing something. Don't use a pencil, because that's cheating. You need to use a pen, but your pen should never leave your hand. It should never leave the paper. I mean, it can leave your hand if you want to, like, because you've been writing so much. But other than that, you should be continually writing on the paper. Words should be just flowing out of your pen, even if it's just jibber jabber. Just try and write as much as you can about the topic, so that you at least have information constantly flowing through your brain, so that it's easier for you to put it down into words. So that way it's also easier for you to continually focus on it than it is for you to just be like, wait, what was I doing again? See, just like that. So in the document, you'll see a chart that shows how to determine which HIP strategy to use for a given document. And I will show you that chart right now. So here is your chart. Okay? Right. So there's your chart. Now, the first question you should ask is the document an image? Now, an image is like any sort of depictionary thing, like a chart, a political cartoon, a drawing, a picture, a painting, anything. Anything that doesn't have like a paragraph in it, that would be considered an image. If it is an image, I would consider either using historical context or continuing to move on to the next question. So if the document is an image, you should use historical context, or you can ask yourself the next question, which is there a message? Now, if there is no message, then stop there, and you should only use historical context. If there is a message, then you can also use point of view, or you can ask yourself the next question. The next question is the document a specific text? If no, then you can only use point of view or historical context. If yes, then you can use all 4 of them. Now, if the image is a political cartoon, it can be considered both an image and a specific text. Why? Because a political cartoon is a specific text that has a purpose and an audience. Because of the fact that a political cartoon, such as the ones that Dr. Seuss drew, were made for a reason. They're trying to promote some sort of idea, while you can't really tell the idea of what someone was thinking or what their purpose was or what their audience was when they take a picture of like a farm during the Dust Bowl. Yes, you could say that their purpose is to display the impact of the Dust Bowl, but that's not really HIPP more than it is just an analysis of the document. So if your document is not an image, by the way, then you should just go straight into asking yourself, is the document a specific text, which it most likely is if it's not an image, I would hope. So if it is a specific text, then you should use either purpose or intended audience, and then ask yourself, is there a message? So I would recommend just looking at the chart. It's a lot easier to look at it and visualize it than it is for me to audibly, demonstrate how it works and how it flows, because it's really hard because it's like everything is interconnected and stuff. So I explained it to the best of my ability. I would please recommend just looking at it, because I probably didn't touch on everything and how everything flows, but you should check it out because I spent a lot of time on it. So please, I will cry if you do not. So the easiest HIPP strategy to use is historical context. However, it is normally not used properly when it precedes a specific text like an oratory. Now, why is this? Well, it's because of the fact that the specific text probably already has context with it in the header, such as with the document 1, where it says statement on Hiroshima to the United States Congress, August 6, 1945, and then it even says in the document Pearl Harbor. So you can't use Pearl Harbor as historical context because it's in the document. So this is why I suggest only using the strategy when paired with an image, because the image does not have any added historical events tacked on and must be inferred by the reader. As a result, using historical context for an image makes the analysis stronger and invokes a greater appeal in the evidence. The hardest HIP strategy to use is always point of view. Although both types of documents can implement point of view, but it is important to remember that there must be some sort of message in the document. The document must be trying to justify some point in which the speaker or rhetor believes. Remain cautious and make sure you understand the document extremely well before attempting to use the POV strategy. Now, don't try and use the same strategy every single time, because then it's just going to get stale. You should make sure only to use POV strategy if you really think that you understand it well and you're like, I want to use POV. I have a great idea of what this guy's doing and I know exactly how to relate this POV to my analysis. Then you can use POV. Remember, the HIP has to relate to the prompt and it has to relate back to your analysis so that you can say that it has some sort of impact or that it has some sort of importance or significance in your evidence. So here are some questions you're going to have to ask yourself. So for historical context, if it is historical context, then you need to ask, what in proximate history is related to the topic of the document? When I say proximate history, I mean what happened 5 years ago or 7 years ago. Something that was close to the date of the action and had some sort of significance or relationship to that document or evidence in that case. For intended audience, who is this document intended for? Why do you think this and what proves this to be true? For purpose, what is the reasoning behind this document? What was the goal in its creation or publication? Does this purpose connect with the audience? Is it successful in achieving its goal? And then the point of view, you're going to ask yourself, what are the beliefs of the speaker or rhetor? Speaker or rhetor just means the person who created the document or the person who spread the document online or leaked it. I don't know. The person or people or group of people or whatever is the original source of the document. So for document 2, it would be San Jose University. For document 1, it would be Harry Truman because he's the one who delivered the speech. And then what proves this to be true and how does this relate to the content of the document? So you have to ask yourself 3 different questions for point of view because it's important. Now you still have to answer yourself a lot of questions for purpose, because for purpose, there's a lot of different things you can do with it. You can either use it to expand upon your evidence or you can use it to expand upon your analysis. I would recommend doing both a little bit, but don't do too much of both because then you're going to waste time and you're going to spend too much time doing purpose rather than analyzing the document. So you need to have that perfect balance. So like Thanos, you need to be perfectly balanced, as all things should be. I'm sorry, little one. Anyways, here's our practice HIPP for the documents. So the purpose of document 1 is to display the efforts of the Manhattan Project and its intended effects via usage to instigate the end of the war with Japan. But you need to, remember, relate that to the prompt. Now, how does that relate to the prompt? Well, you would have to relate it to the prompt in your analysis. So you need to have an analysis of both your HIP and the analysis of your document, which is why I'm saying it needs to be perfectly balanced. Again, as all things should be, I'm sorry, little one. Why do I do this to myself? Document 2. The historical context of this document is that during the Great Depression of the 1930s, unemployment rates soared to nearly 25%, but were slightly diminished by the New Deal policies of FDR's administration. Now, it doesn't explicitly say anything about FDR's New Deal in the document. However, it does show that it decreases. So this is actually just evidence paired up with the HIPP. Now, I can use the evidence from the document that I gather, from the chart about the wartime dip, but I can also use this historical context for like how it increased, but then it decreased a little bit because of the policies. And sort of that's like a historical context, like just to sort of contextualize into the point that I'm trying to make. So the next strategy is using the LEQ introduction. Now, we've already gone over this in the last video, which was the LEQ strategies, so I'd recommend watching that if you had forgotten, or you can go to the link that's in the description of that video and take a look at that as well. Again, I'm pretty sure I said that in the video back then too. Just watch the video if you need to. So, I'm not going to go over that again because I hope that you have already remembered it, or you're going to go watch that right now because I'm a lazy bum. So the next strategy, which is a DBQ oriented strategy, is cite your evidence, which is really important. Make sure you cite your evidence. If you don't cite your evidence, then you're not going to get points for it, because those readers are not going to actively try and look to see what document you pulled your evidence from if it's from a document. So you better cite it. Otherwise, they're going to say, well, this person didn't use any evidence from the document, or like they only cited once, so they only used evidence from one document. Cite your documents, people. If you do not cite your documents, you will not get a good score on your DBQ. Or any essay. This applies to AP Lang as well. Don't cite your sources in your synthesis essay or even just your rhetorical analysis essay. You're gonna fail. So make sure you cite your sources. So there are two ways to cite documentative evidence. This depends on whether you want to include your HIP strategies in your choice evidence. Remember to not cite directly or just to describe the content of the document. Now when I say cite directly, I mean say like quotes. Like don't use quotes. Please don't use quotes. And don't just directly say the content of documents, because the readers have already read the documents. They don't want to read it again. Just don't do that. And it also doesn't make it seem like you understand the content of the documents. You're just repeating what it said, or you're just like regurgitating what it was about instead of saying the significance of it, we'll get into it. So you're going to ask yourself 4 questions. What is the most important point of the document? Am I including HIP strategies? Does this evidence support my argument? And how can I expand upon this information? Nice. So here's my practice evidence. So an example of a government project that helped rebuild jobs was the Manhattan Project, which resulted in the creation of the atomic bombs that ended the war with Japan. Document 1 in parentheses, so it's an internal citation. This evidence works as a lead-in for analysis, as we will explain how and why the Manhattan Project formed jobs. Now, this is also a good pull of evidence for the document, as it neither quotes nor describes the content of the excerpt. It only mentions the most important point of the document, which was one of the questions that we asked, and uses it to prove a claim regarding the establishment of jobs during World War II. There is no HIPP in this evidence, as you can see, because it's only one sentence. HIP. Now, HIP can either form a complex sentence, and this is not a complex sentence, so it doesn't really matter. But it has to be either a complex sentence, or a compound complex sentence, or just 2 separate sentences entirely, or separated by like a semicolon. because then they'd be related somehow, but I would think that would just lengthen your sentence to the point of no return. So I would suggest just, if you're not using a semicolon, just separate them into two different sentences. Now, my next piece of evidence is during the Great Depression, unemployment rates soared to nearly 25%, but were slightly diminished by the New Deal policies of FDR's administration. Here's my hip. World War II allowed for the employment of a majority of Americans by providing military jobs for men and new opportunities for women in the workforce, which brought unemployment rates down significantly. Document 2, internal citation. This evidence begins with historical context for our HIP strategy. I would recommend starting with historical context, because historical context should start, because it's historical context, meaning it's from history, proximate history, meaning like before the events that are occurring. So yeah, there's that. And purpose, I would also, just for most HIP, just start with a lead-in with the HIP, and then go into the evidence, and then analysis. Or you can do HIP, connection, evidence, and then your analysis, but we'll get more into that later. And by taking information from the document and using it to form our evidence as support, we have strengthened our argument. Now we need to elaborate on why this is significant in our analysis. Analysis is for significance, how this relates to the prompt, what the importance is, and why this matters, which is really just significance, but in a different term. So a lot of repetition, but not repetition, if you know what I'm saying. That's how you write essays. Next strategy is use your brain, which is essentially just outside evidence, but I didn't want to call it outside evidence because we already had Cite Evidence, and I didn't want to like repeat the same thing, so I didn't want to say outside evidence. So I decided to just say use your brain instead, because it's also kind of funny, because I'm like saying use your brain because you're dumb. I didn't think I needed to explain that, but I did anyways. So, yeah. The best way to come up with this is, after writing your thesis, to come up with examples or events that might support your claim but do not come from the documents. If the claim is about the formation of jobs as a result of World War II, then an example of outside evidence would be Rosie the Riveter. Try not to use outside evidence too much in your essay, or you will lose time to work with the documented evidence. Also, spread out the outside information around the essay. There should not be two pieces of external data in one body paragraph. If you have two pieces of outside evidence in one body paragraph, you're doing something wrong. Because you should be able to use plenty of documented evidence. I would suggest probably you're going to have like 3 prongs, so you're probably going to have 3 body paragraphs, but you could have 2 body paragraphs instead. And then you would have 2 prongs, and then in your 2 body paragraphs you would have 3 documents each and 1 outside evidence each. And if you were to do 3 prongs, which would entail 3 body paragraphs, you would do 2 documents in each body paragraph, and you would choose which paragraphs you want to do outside evidence for. If you have like 4 prongs, I think you've done something wrong, and egregiously wrong. If you have 1 prong, then you've done something really wrong. If you have let me reword that. If you have 1 prong or 4 prongs, you've done something wrong. If you have 2 prongs, I mean, that's okay, but like you have to use 6 documents, so I don't know how you're going to relate them into 2 categories. So you can either relate them into 2 categories. If it's like similarities or differences, I mean, then that kind of makes sense. But like, if it's not, then I don't know what you're doing. But especially since it's supposed to be like a 2-1 split, you should probably have 3 body paragraphs, but your decision. Final is body structure. Now the body structure is going to be a little bit different than it was before. So you're going to ask yourself 4 questions. Wow, 4 questions. Again, who would have thought? How should I structure my body paragraphs? What is the best way to organize my information? How can I most efficiently argue my claims and defend my position? What should I do to achieve good analysis and reasoning? Again, we're all struggling to get that analysis and reasoning point, and I managed to get it last essay, but I didn't get it on my DBQ. Yeah, don't touch me. Here's the structure that you're going to use for your body paragraphs. So it's going to be claim plus your historical skill and then it's going to be your evidence and then it's going to be relating back to the prompt. Then it's going to be significance of the evidence. And then it's going to be your analysis. And then finally, we'll just do like optional contextualization. So like you can add some like post context to the end of your body paragraph. And so you might be wondering, but Jackson, why didn't you put a practice body paragraph in the document? Well, last time I put a practice body paragraph in the last document and none of you read it. So I'm forcing you to go through it with me because either you didn't read it in the last video, so you didn't read the actual document because I didn't go over it, or you were like, oh wow, this is cool, and then tried to copy exactly what I did and didn't actually apply any of the strategies that I told you to use, and so you didn't do as well as you should. Let's go through this together. Claim and historical skill. Okay, so first thing we should do is we should go back to the prompt. And it says analyze the effectiveness of World War II on ending the effects of the Great Depression. So analyze its effectiveness would mean that we're probably studying the causes and the effectiveness of the causes on the effect, and the effect is happening to just be this one thing, and this one effect happens to be ending the Great Depression. We need to come up with the prompt that we're going to use for this. And I would assume that we're probably going to use one document since we only have two documents. We could try using both. If we wanted to, we could try using both. Let's try using both. Aight? Let's use both. So we need to find something that they're both related to. So one of them is related to job creation, and the other one we could also relate to job creation. Wow, that's our prompt. That was really difficult, wasn't it? Dang. That was really difficult. World War II was successful in reducing the effects of the Great Depression because of the creation of jobs. Then we're going to do our evidence. We've already done our evidence. So take the evidence that is here and write it down, the evidence that we've done. Okay? Then we're going to relate back to the prompt. Okay? Relate back to the prompt. Explain how this relates to the prompt. Then you would say, this displays or demonstrates or paints the picture of the job creation that occurred during World War II or during this time period. Okay? Significance of the evidence. These jobs that were created by government programs such as the Manhattan Project or the or military jobs, allowed for many people to leave unemployment, which contributed to the decrease in deflation, decrease in deflation rates, which also allowed the economy to get back on track, and therefore helped reduce the effects of the Great Depression. As a result, the Great Depression was the effects of the Great Depression were drastically diminished because of such programs. That is our significance of the evidence and our analysis with an optional contextualization. Do that yourself if you want to. And that would be it for this video. Thank you for watching, of course. Thank you for watching. What am I doing anymore? I am going to sleep. So thanks for watching, and I said that 3 times already. Goodbye.